Well, good morning to all of you. Welcome to our service here at the UU Church of Meadville. So nice to see you all. So nice to see Jim Scott back in our sanctuary, virtually anyway. Those of you who've been here a while remember him coming and visiting and doing music for us. It's just great to see him and hear him. As you know, we continue to be in need of contributions of your energy and your time, and if you have it, your money. And you can see on the screen here how you can continue to serve by donating if you are moved to do that. This month's Share the Plate recipient is the Meadville Area Teen Lounge. And you remember the times in the sanctuary when we all go around and shake hands with each other and pass the peace. And some people don't like it because it's too chaotic, but some people like it because it's so chaotic. And so we're going to recapitulate that now. Everybody unmute, say hi to everybody all at the same time. Hello.
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 Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. The opening words this morning are adapted from writer and doctor physician Nadia Hashrimi. She says, refugees don't just escape a place. They have to escape 1,000 memories until they have put enough time and distance between them and their misery to wake to a better day.
And as Reverend Alex, who is actually physically in our sanctuary, lights our chalice, please feel free to join along with me at home on mute with these chalice lighting words adapted from Reverend Amy Carroll Webb. How often we seek refuge in this sacred flame from the world's trouble and pain. Today, may our lamp light the way for those who know no refuge, that we may open our minds, our arms, our hearts. And as you know, we like to recite together our affirmation of covenant and mission, so let's do that. Our covenant is to be a loving, joyful community that nurtures spiritual growth, promotes compassion and social responsibility, and service in an atmosphere of mutual trust. Our mission is to be a faith community devoted to love and respect, reason, and justice. Now we'll have our hymn, and we'd like to thank the Sunny Hill UU Church of the South Hills in Pittsburgh for offering us Wake Now My Senses.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now
reading is from my colleague, adapted from my colleague, UU Minister Erica Hewitt, who has a part-time ministry in Maine on the coast and is also worship coordinator for Worship Web with the UUA. And this is what she says: we lose sight of the fact that we are powerful players in a fragile but wildly interconnected global community, which is often. We've lost a bit of our soul. That's what fear does. Fear is a voice that says nothing matters more than self-preservation and self-confidence, self-importance. Fear drains the antifreeze out of your heart so that your compassion center runs cold. It cuts off the feeding tubes that keep our souls subtle and our morality intact. And fear, I think, is what is the heart of the stingy fool's game of deciding which immigrants are deserving of asylum. Fear says, from my comfortable position of privilege, I will decide whose hell is raw and terrifying enough to merit compassion. The question for the breakout rooms this morning, you have to use your imagination for a moment, imagining you have all power. And the question is, how would you solve the immigration crisis in this country? So, thanks for being here, everyone, this morning. And thanks to Josh for leading the service. And Amy has a Sunday off, which she entirely certainly deserves. So Kirsten, thanks for doing all the work you do to get us not only organized, but online. And as I was thinking about this service yesterday, I was thinking, wow, what a week this has been. It's just been one of those weeks where it just seems like a lot's happened. And of course, here at the church, we had the garage sale, which I imagine Deb will say a few words about later. But more importantly, there was a virtual climate summit that was understandably overshadowed by the Derek Chauvin verdict in Minneapolis on Tuesday. And between the climate summit and the verdict, I was online most of the week watching everything. The reactions to the verdict ranged from joy to relief, and for some people, anger. Relief seemed to be the most common expression from those interviewed on Tuesday and beyond. And others commented that it really seemed odd that such an open and shut case of law enforcement abuse would be questioned at all. Of course, he was guilty. One of my UU minister colleagues on Wednesday wrote a brief commentary on Facebook. She's the Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel, who is the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Center County in State College. I asked her if I could use her words this morning. As a Black American, she captured feelings of so many Black people about the verdict. And this is what she wrote. The verdict, feels so small. Like a tiny boat adrift in an ocean of pain. It took hundreds of years and so many broken, bruised, lynched, raped, and shot bodies for us to arrive at this place. The verdict of one trial does not negate that US history. The verdict is a tiny boat floating in the rough seas of hate, still so far from the safe harbor of justice. And I appreciated her words for many reasons, but particularly the image of a tiny boat floating in the rough seas of hate, still so far from the safe harbor of justice. because that spoke to my topic this morning, finding the other shore. And I'll return to her thoughts a bit later. The term finding the other shore was something I'd never really heard of until I lived at a Buddhist monastery in Oregon. Its religious meanings come from both Buddhist and Hindi teachings. And the meaning of finding the other shore or going to the other shore was from a sutra, a very short one called Heart Sutra. And a sutra is basically a teaching, concludes with a mantra. And a mantra sometimes are nonsense words, but in this case, never been translated, at least officially, from the original language of Sanskrit. So the sutra concludes with this mantra: Gate, gate, paragate, parasum gate, bodhisvaha, and then an exclamation point. It means, if you translate it into English, gone, gone, everyone gone to the other shore, an awakening. And then afterwards, we would all say, ha! Because that's what you do with sutras. And finding the other shore in that Eastern tradition is the search for awakening, nirvana, awareness, enlightenment. And for any of you who have done meditation or have done any religious traditions, especially from the East, know that it is not an easy journey. It takes a lifetime. But it's not limited to just Eastern traditions. Christianity and Islam teachings speak to the entry for heaven, if we're lucky, after death through forgiveness, atonement, and redemption. That's also finding the other shore. Judaism has a more complex understanding of the afterlife. Rabbi and author Joseph Tulishkin writes that, quote, in Judaism, the belief in an afterlife is less a leap of faith than a logical outgrowth of other Jewish beliefs. And he goes on to say, we are asked to leave the afterlife in Yahweh, God's hands. One rabbi friend who is also Buddhist in South Carolina told me one time that Jewish notions of finding peace in the afterlife are like being on the ocean in darkness. And Yahweh and the Torah and the teachings are like a lighthouse calling the lost home. But I want to lay aside the religious aspects of finding the other shore to focus on two other ways of understanding the power in that expression. The first one will be about climate refugees in this world seeking a new home and safety. And then the second will come back to that quote by Reverend Sissel. Last Sunday, when I was doing the Earth Day service, I briefly mentioned the climate refugees. And I went back to do some more research this week. The latest estimates of climate refugees fleeing their homes by 2050 is approximately 200 million annually. This number is based on estimates by the World Bank and the UN Refugee Agency. That number of 200 million could be far higher depending on sea level rise, perhaps up to 1 billion people. Many of the most crowded cities on Earth are at or near on coastlines. Bangladesh and India are particularly vulnerable due to their low-lying coasts. And then, of course, you've got added heat that will make many regions far less hospitable for living in cool weather and for crops. And sea level rise is only one part of a climate refugee crisis. Drought, more severe weather, lack of fresh water, and warfare, of course, will all contribute to what is now called climate migrations. This isn't new, though. We know that. We've seen refugees fleeing Syria, Iraq, Libya for years because of war and unrest, and including risky boat trips across the Mediterranean. Thousands made it to Turkey, Greece, Italy, and other areas, but at least 17,000 people have died in the Mediterranean, not able to get to safety, and likely the number is far higher. Well, that's the other people on the other side of the ocean. What about us? As we are quite aware, the United States is not immune to refugee migrations. We have seen how contentious the issue of immigration is to Americans. Thousands of people from Central and South America attempt to reach the United States and apply for refuge or asylum. In the last 6 months, many have come from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Why? And this goes back to the climate crisis. Why? Because in part, 2 very significant hurricanes struck those countries in November of last year within 2 weeks of each other. Homes were lost, crops destroyed, and fragile economies collapsed. Governments weren't really able to help very much. Bandits and militia forces have killed many as they tried to escape. Is it a wonder? Is it a wonder that families scraped together what they could to send their children to the US border in search of safety, even if they had to stay behind? The North American climate refugee crisis will only get worse. Where will the residents of Florida and other coastal states go if sea level continues to rise? What about southern and southwest farming when fresh water is scarce? When crops no longer can be grown because of the heat and changed conditions? Are we, as a nation, prepared for this climate migration unlike any other? And of course, the question always remains, will we have to migrate ourselves, or our children, or our grandchildren? Have we, as a nation, prepared for this? Well, interestingly enough, I read this morning that Buffalo, New York is going to start advertising itself as a climate refuge for outsiders to be able to resettle there as the temperatures change. And a number of other cities, especially in the northern part of the country, are doing the same. And really, this is only 30 years away, in 2050, when a lot of the bad omens and statistics say that we are going to be in the middle of what is happening now. Finally, I want to return to Reverend Cecil's words. Another way of finding the other shore is finding justice and true equality. Respect, being able to get jobs that mean more than minimum wage, being able to have housing, being able to have mortgages that aren't predatory, and so on. So imagine for a moment that tiny boat that she talks about as that verdict, floating on a sea of hatred. And that's how she describes the verdict. But let's go a bit farther. Let's imagine much larger populations of Black people, maybe in their own tiny boats, seeking their safe home. They've endured so much over 400 years. And that other shore of safety, respect, true equality, and justice still seems distant and dangerous and unreachable. Imagine them finding the other shore and wanting to come on land. Who will greet them after all these years when they reach the other shore? Will it be their neighbors or friends? Will they be welcoming them to peace and safety and respect? Will it be us? Or will it be militarized law enforcement and soldiers who will push them back yet again to say there is no sanctuary for you here? So finding the other shore has many meanings: awakening, awareness, true safe refuge, and justice and equality. And I would say that is one of the reasons that we practice liberal religion, in order to not only find the other shore for ourselves, but for all others around us. Isn't that why we practice liberal religion today? So I keep wondering, how would we here in Meadville help that come to pass? To find the other shore and to be safe. Thank you. So we're going to go to the question of how would you solve the immigration crisis in this country? Or we can talk about whatever else is on your mind that might reflect that question of what is finding the other shore? Thank you.
So it's a time when you can't be a human being without encountering the fears and the anxieties and the pains of the issues around climate and injustice and coronavirus scarcity. And so as we move to the conclusion of our service today, let's all remember that one of the best things that we can do is reach out our hands and join with others to face what is facing us. Amen. As Reverend Alex extinguishes our chalice, I'll read these words, and feel free to read along with me at home from Reverend Eric Cherry. Let us hold the refugee and the immigrant in prayer as we depart this Sunday morning. May God be with you. May your grief and loss be assuaged. May the hard road you travel include spaces of rest and security. May you know your inherent worth and dignity every day of the journey. Let us pray for the people who were met along the way. May they remember how they were strangers too. May they embrace the pathways of compassion. May they recall the teachings of the prophets. May they make room in their hearts and their homes.
As we come to a close on this Sunday, April 25th, I want to thank you all for coming and wish you a wonderful rest of your Sunday. If you'd like to stay and participate in the coffee hour breakout rooms, I ask that you please stay while I recreate those breakout rooms for you. If you wish to leave, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.